Let me just thank everybody for being here. Just so quick clarification. This is a collaborative effort, and it is an important collaborative effort. It's not about who's in control and who isn't. And I just wanted to be real clear that the school system is operated by the CEO of the school system and the board of directors, and the state has oversight. The mayor's office is here because we think it's important that this collaboration take place. So on Thursday, what I asked Mr. Chow to do was to, Mr. Chow here is, I call him my top engineer for the city, along with Mr. Sharkey with General Services, because what we do have are emergency contracts that we qualify people to do the work. And so I asked them to collaborate with the school system. What we learned from our CEO of the school system is that we had 60 schools that were offline, am I correct? 60 schools that went offline all at the same time. Now, y'all see JFK Airport, how terrible that is and what a terrible problem that is facing. This was a big problem for the city of Baltimore. And so I thought it was important that we jump in and provide all of the assistance that we possibly could. And so I asked Mr. Chow to lead that particular effort, and working with Keith Scroggins and the team over at the Baltimore City Public Schools, I think to take 60 schools, to deal with 60 schools being offline all at the same time was a tremendous effort. And so what you should know is that not only, I think, is the President of City Council here? Yeah, I see our Vice President, I see Mary Pat Clark, I see the President of City Council, Jack, come on. And I kept our President of City Council up to date. We had conversations all weekend in terms of what was taking place. One of the things that the CEO of the school system and I sat down and talked about early on, because this is really important, when our schools close, there must be a place for our children to go. And because oftentimes I think people forget about the folks who are homeless or the children who come to school to make sure that they get a meal. I think before she and I both were into our positions, the policy was that it would be 3 days before that process was activated. We have changed that to a 1 day. Anytime a school closed, a rec center or a facility of public will be opened up and food will be provided. Now on Thursday, I think we started at noon at the recreation centers providing food. Kate, I think you got a chance to see on Friday the operation at the school system. I think by 1:30 every rec center had food and children were fed. And in fact, Friday and Saturdays are great days at the rec centers because we extend the hours, at least in the VRI zones, to 11 o'clock on Friday, 10 o'clock on Friday night and 11 o'clock on Saturday night. And so I think the message that I really want to leave you all with is that this is still a work in progress. When we walked through the school systems, we went through 3 schools on yesterday. Yes. 3 schools yesterday that were very problematic, especially Douglas High School. And we are still working in Douglas High School, putting new tiling on the floors. I was really glad to see that we didn't totally damage the TV lab that our young people operate out of over there. You all know how damaging that could be for you all if you were to have to undergo something like that. But while we were there, we noted that while we had fixed the boiler, that a pipe had burst. And so they were on that right away. Our emergency contractors will work 24/7 with the school system. As I said to Dr. Sandalisas, tell us what you need and we're there to help. And I think when she shares a few things with you all, that she would be able to say that we were as cooperative as possible. I want to take a moment again to say to Mr. Chow. Mr. Chow went over immediately and worked with the school system. We have our, what do we call that room?
Command center.
Our command center. We have a command center set up at the, we're actually in your school board meeting
that's right,
room.
in the school board.
In the school board meeting room. Where are they going to meet tomorrow? Because we're committed to be there because the weather, even when the weather changes, you all, even when the weather warms up, it also can create some conditions for the schools as well. I want to also thank the many contractors that have worked with us. I see a few of them. JCM, JCI, Johnson Controls, Not Foundation. And I also have to give a big shout out to the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company. I called Calvin Bell Butler. I know a lot of Calvins. I think one's running. I think one is running for. Never mind. Anyway, so I called Calvin Butler. He is going to really kill me. I called Calvin Butler because see, I call Calvin sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, and he is always very responsive. And said, I know you all work in front of the meter, but I need some help with these schools. So he immediately activated his contractors as well, many who are represented here. And I want to thank him for answering the call and, more importantly, for working with us. I wanted to also ask Mr. Chow if he would say a few words, but I wanted to ask Dr. Santelises to sort of bring us up to date in terms of where we are. She called me earlier today to let me know, why don't I have her share that, called me earlier today to let me know that there are some schools that we have some concerns about. And so, again, and then I called Reggie Moore, he will share with you some of the places that we've activated for the children. So let me let Mr. Chow speak, and then I'll have our CEO of the school system. Sure. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank the mayor for her leadership, holding the team together along with our BG partners and everyone else, and our general services. I would say this is a very evolving, as you can see, very evolving situation. The minute that we thought that we have everything under control, yesterday afternoon, we thought there was only a couple of schools that we had to worry about. As you can see, overnight, the number had grew to 6 to perhaps 8 now. It's because the pipes continue to freeze, and then of course the infrastructure over there is old, and as we repair one part, the other part fails another time. But our team is on the ground. They are working around the clock, and we'll continue to address them as emergency arises and try to combat that. And the key is try to get all the kids back to school as soon as we can, and we were working very hard. And I want to do a shout out again to extend my appreciation to the school and to Keith, and certainly to Dr. Santelises and her leadership, and because the collaboration was awesome, and so thank you.
Sure. Well, I just want to start out by saying that the mayor is right. She actually stole a bit of my thunder. Every single time I called her cell phone during this unprecedented challenge with facilities, she says hello, and then the next words out of her mouth are, what do you need? And what can I get you? And that has been consistent since this challenge began. I think what is also unprecedented, as she noted, that this really has been about bringing together. The city director, Chow, already had his hands full, and I want to publicly acknowledge that I knew he had his hands full with water main breaks and everything else, and yet, again, he lent us project managers, contractors, emergency procurement, and he told me from the beginning, you need to know you have 24/7 access to folks who can help you get schools back online. So when people want to know how it got done because of the people that you see standing here. And that is why we are as close as we were. As the mayor said, we had 60 schools at once. But I will also say, as some schools came offline as being fixed, we had others who jumped into challenge areas. This morning, there were 2 schools we opened. We did not open, so Calverton, as we announced yesterday, we did not open today. We had an additional 6 schools today that we had to have early release for because, and a great example of that is at Lakewood Elementary School today. As young people, we had verified the building last night. As young people were walking into the building, a pipe burst this morning. So those young people had to go home. So in total, we have about 8 schools that had challenges where young people either did not come in today, we closed, or that we had early release. I will also say that we will be having, as a number of the surrounding counties do, we will be having an early release day today because of the weather. Again, like a number of the surrounding counties. But I just cannot say enough. Again, the private support we've had, as the mayor noted earlier, and the cooperation with Park and Recs, and again, Director Moore, who I know will speak.
Yes.
It really does show that this has been, frankly, a cross-city united effort around really what was an unprecedented challenge. And we continue. I was on the ground this morning in a number of schools, and I shared with the mayor. We still definitely have some challenges in spaces, but in particular classrooms in certain buildings. But I also want to give a shout out to my team as well that's been is now working on fumes. They've been working for 2 weeks. So our operations team and our principals who are moving young people where there are spaces, and this is important for people to hear, where there might still be cold classroom spaces, principals are working to accommodate those young people in warm spaces so they will not be sitting in the cold. But that's what I have for, and again, I just want to say a thank you to everybody, because it really has been a yeoman's effort. So thank you again to the mayor.
Thank you. Let me also take a moment to thank the food bank, to thank Classic Catering, Soda Exo, and others who responded when I said we need food to put into the rec centers. And let me say this as well. In my discussion with the CEO, our plan is to coordinate this effort that when schools close, for whatever that reason is, we will activate the meals that those children are supposed to get and have them directed to the rec centers so that we can make sure that our children are fed. That is the new policy, and that will be the policy moving forward. Again, I want to say that we don't know what the outcome is going to be in terms of total fixing of all the schools, but we do know that we're committed to do that. And as I said to Dr. Sandelisa, she does have access to emergency services, and whatever is going on, we had a conversation late last night, I think that was around midnight, and she said, I'm not sure whether these number of schools are going to be able to open. I said, because the contractors have left. I said, your contractors are available to you 24/7. All you all have to do is point us in the direction in terms of what the needs are, and we will be there to accommodate. So again, a big shout out to our contractors. And Mr. Child, have you had any sleep yet? He looks good for somebody who's been working 24 hours, doesn't he? Yeah. So a great.
It's all the makeup.
It's all in the makeup. Just great on coordinating this effort. And I was up at our VRI meeting this morning, and I was reminded that when we talk about command centers, what command centers should look like. We ought to have all of our schools online. We ought to be able to see what's happening in every single school. And so that's something that we're going to move towards. I'm going to have Frank Johnson work with your folks. We know we're working on internet services and stuff. But I also want to give a big shout out to the Archbishop, Lori, because I got texts all last night about what else can we do. And so one of the things, and I'm going to ask the CEO along with Mr. Chow and your facilities folks with Keith to evaluate whether or not we, as we look towards what are we going to do for Calverton, because that is one school that we're going to take offline at some point, because it is one of the 21st century schools that was scheduled to go offline. As you all know, we've got $1 billion to build new schools in the city. We're building 23 new schools. 2, I believe, opened up this year.
That's right.
2 last year, 2 additional coming up, and another 4 to 7 next year. But in the meantime, there are schools that must be closed, and this is a reason. I know people in neighborhoods and communities get really upset when you say you got to close a school. But the fact of the matter is the reason we're closing many of these schools is because they're not fit for our children to go into. We need our children into safe places. And I know oftentimes when we leave a school, and this is a conversation that we're having at this level, that before we close a school or during the process of closing a school, that there is a plan put in place for that neighborhood or community. What is that building going to be? I think that is more of the uproar than it is about whether or not we move to a new facility. People want to know what's going to go in place of a building that has occupied a space in a neighborhood that has become the anchor for that community. So we've got to address those issues as well. I wanted to have our Parks and Recreation share the plan. Mr. President, I wanted to ask you if you want to say a few words. What he's going to share with us is going forward. We've got some schools that are offline today. He's made some arrangements in terms of the food, so forth. Reggie Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor stated, rec centers, in the case of school closures, we have a plan in place now where our rec centers will be open. We'll activate those centers as early as 10 a.m. In the morning, and they'll run until 9 p.m. at night. We was informed starting last night that there was at least 4 schools that was going to be offline today. One was Baybrook Elementary Middle School. There's a rec center that's near, it's Farron Baybrook, that's active, and the staff is there now. We'll provide lunch, as well as we're working with our family league to provide a separate meal this afternoon. Furley Elementary is near Heron Run Rec Center. That center is active and open. James McHenry Elementary Middle School, also our rec centers are attached. So with the school being down, that means our rec center is down. But what we did was we reached out to the group that's running the Martin Luther King Recreation location, which used to be an old PAL center. That center now is going to be activated, and we're working with that group now, and we will have staff there to provide meals in that location. As far as Calverton, that was another location where we didn't have a rec center directly in walking distance, but luckily we had a rec center that we now has been ran by the Omega Psi Phi, which is Easterwood Recreation Center. We now have taken over that facility today to provide meals for kids. And as other closures takes place, our job is to make sure that we're there to assist Dr. Santeliz and her staff to make sure that kids have warm meals and they have somewhere they can come. And beyond just the meals, there's activities, structured activities, and I believe some went out Friday and saw some of the different activities that was taking place while the kids was there in the rec center. And I think that is it.
Mr. President, would you share a few words, please?
Good morning. First, I'd like to thank the mayor for her leadership, thank Dr. Santeliz and all the department heads that work together along with the Baltimore City Public School System to get our schools ready for our children. These are all of our children, and this is not just something that's happening in Baltimore City. It's happening in counties around us as well, where some schools are closed because of heating conditions, because most of the schools in the state of Maryland are old, antiquated schools. But we're here for Baltimore City public schools and for our children, and we don't want to have anybody think that we don't care. That's why the mayor reached out to the CEO and activated all our city agencies to coordinate getting these boilers fixed. So again, I want to thank Mayor Pugh. I want to thank our CEO of our schools, Dr. Santeliz, Lisa's, and all of our department heads, especially Mr. Chow, who made sure that his engineering team was there along with our general service employees to make sure we get these schools up and running. It's work in progress as we bring on new schools and close down some of the old schools. We won't have these kind of things as we move into the future for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Sharkey, did you want to say? Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing I just want to add. As an update location, Rec and Park now have activated what we call hashtag BCRP alerts. If we would encourage people to constantly go out, look at that page. It gives you updates of what rec centers are maybe open now because of school closures, or if we're having any problems in our centers and a center is closed or down. If you go to hashtag BCRP alerts, you can get up-to-date information from Rec and Park.
Mr. Sharkey, did you want to share?
Sure, certainly.
It's our head of general services.
Hey, everybody.
No, I think you're okay.
Steve Sharkey, head of Director of General Services. I just want to thank the mayor, Rudy, and Dr. Santeliz and everybody else for working together. It's definitely been a great team effort. Department of General Services has been able to access our contractors to greatly improve schools. We've hit up 16 schools. We've got a presence down at the command center, and we just keep on calling. Her name's Olivia. She's doing an amazing job, and she's going down there, and every call that we get, we're working with our contractors, and just want to thank RF Water and I'm sorry, Denverella. Sorry. These two, we called them on Friday, said, hey, we're going to need you to work this weekend. And whenever we got another guy, they would come, and some of these guys were working late into last night, late into tonight, and we've got some crews out there today. So thank you to the contractors and thank you to the team.
Okay. So that's our update. I know the CEO needs to get back. We want to go check on some more things as it relates to the schools. But any questions?
About how many total people do you think worked over the weekend?
Ooh, I have no idea. I know it was hundreds, because at one time we started out with 44 contractors, so I know it's hundreds of people that are out there working.
So 44 contractors, and how many total firms did you bring in?
I don't have that number. We can get you that number.
Who paid paid for it, and how much money was?
I just said that we're still working.
Okay, working.
We're still working. This is a work in
What
progress.
sort of support have you received from the governor?
Well, I'm focused on what we should be doing. And so I've got a meeting on Wednesday. I'm focused on getting the work done. I thought it was important that we get this work done. I don't have time to sit around and figure out who's in charge. I'm pulling all agencies, whoever wants to help. The private sector has jumped in. The public sector is here. And again, the Archbishop has even offered up. Anybody who want to offer up help to Baltimore City, individuals have gone and created a GoFundMe page. But this is about what we do as a city to move our city forward.
So that was their support of the governor.
I don't know. He may have sent the check. We don't know.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Santelises, you mentioned hopefully being able to move the kids out of the co-classrooms to other areas within the school. What
Yes.
are the options there?
Yes, within the school, and the options vary based on the size of the school.
So you know,
See,
right, so for example, as many of you all know, this is a city built for 1 million people. We have these huge, huge school buildings that house as many as a couple thousand students. And so as the population has gone down, but at the same time, we've moved students into newer buildings. So you may still have like 6 through 12 might be in one side of the building, 1 through 5 might be in another part of the building. Well, the part that the 6 to 12 may be in is a warmer part of the building, but still a very huge part. So the one thing that's important is that we accommodate the classroom sizes of individuals, and that's how we're doing it. So that's why when I asked them to, as they get ready to leave, to go out and look at KEO, because KEO is one of the facilities that the Archbishop is offering us to utilize, is let's make sure that we're able to accommodate the students, but also to make sure that everything can be done. Because we do have other sites as well, but we want to make sure that the cost of moving there equals the cost of the site that we currently are looking at.
And that early release today is at 1 p.m., correct?
yes, yeah. But if you count when the buses start,
Okay.
and I'm sorry, it's probably too much internal, but yeah, if you count when the buses start, the buses will probably start going around 11:30.
Yeah, several counties have already closed, and as you well know, there's ice and snow. We don't want our children slipping and sliding up and down the street.
I just wanted to clarify the numbers of schools. You said there
We
were 60 schools went offline.
We started out with 60.
When, was that last week on
Right,
Wednesday?
So on Wednesday, by
Okay.
Wednesday, we had 60 total that were offline.
Right.
Then certain schools came back online and others went off. So we approximated about 85 schools total, right? Were on or offline over the period of 4 to 5 days.
But then by yesterday, I think somebody said you thought there's only 4 that would be offline.
Well, yes.
Today
Yeah.
there's 8.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we had water, to some of the mayor's descriptions. Again, schools that were fine, which, I've been saying since Wednesday, right? That's part of the challenge of being in old buildings. And we were talking about it, Mr. Chow, the mayor and I, when we walked in yesterday in some places, it was fine. This morning you go in, schools that were never an issue, then would have a pipe burst.
And-
That's the challenge.
So let me just say but here's the other challenge that we all must face. And this is why I'm also talking to our federal partners. We have an infrastructure problem in this city. There's no question about it. We have some of the oldest pipes in the country, over 100 years old. We're under federal mandate to fix those pipes. That's an infrastructure issue. And so we should have a strong infrastructure package that our federal partners should be pushing through, regardless of who's in the White House. This is a major issue, and cities' infrastructures throughout this nation, especially on this Northeast corridor, are very challenging.
But I just wanted to get the list, or clarify the list that was closed today.
Sure, so let me
I
get.
think you said Calverton,
Calverton was the number one that we said yesterday would not be open.
and Douglas, is that open even though it hasn't worked?
Douglas
Yes.
is open,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, so do you want the complete list of schools? I'm
No,
just-
I
Yeah,
only
okay.
have Calverton, Douglas, someone said Lakewood,
Yes.
Right.
Lakeland, okay.
So why don't we give you we'll just give you all a list, okay? We'll send you the list,
And I
okay?
did want to ask you, Dr. Santelises, you said that this may be a ridiculous question since there's some Latin plumber trucks at my street last week.
90 water main
Yeah,
breaks that
right.
we've had in the
Not
city.
just you, but you called it unprecedented, which I'm not sure if we've hit a record today with the freezing temperatures. But what makes this, can you just explain to people who are watching what, or listening or reading, what at this point makes it an unprecedented situation?
So it's two things, right? It is one, the length of time with temperatures that are at a certain level, right? So we know, for example, and I said to the mayor, hopefully I'll get an early Valentine's Day present and have 3 or 4 days at 40 degrees or above.
But that's going to happen this week.
That's going to happen this week,
Right,
so
right.
I'm very happy about
So
that.
your Valentine is on the way.
That's right. See, it's on its way. But we had close to 10 days, close to 2 weeks of temperatures that were below, 20 degrees or below. If we have 1 or 2 of those days, we can manage, right? Which is why we might have 4 or 5 schools offline. What happened was the extended cold at that level for that period of time, as the mayor noted, we had 60 schools at one time go offline. And so our infrastructure and processes were not built to handle that many schools offline, which is why the assistance of the city, of our private partners, was so critical. That's why it's a big deal. It's that amount of temperature for that long, that low a temperature for that long on buildings that are old and systems that are outdated yields what we got.
Look at the national news, you all. This is a problem throughout the nation. I mean, this is an unprecedented freeze.
That's right.
Yeah, did you keep, from somebody who actually kept water running all weekend, the first time?
Should we remind the public that? Yes.
Did you keep the heat on in all the schools over the weekend to make sure that?
Over this past weekend?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
So you
Absolutely.
didn't shut it down?
No.
No, we didn't. But
no.
for example, at Baltimore Polytechnic, and Mr. Chow and I had conversations about this, we had, one of his recommendations was to have someone, which we agreed with, literally sit. We had somebody who sat right at Polytechnic last night, making sure that the flame in the one remaining boiler did not go out. That's the challenge of old buildings. And so that's the kind of thing that that the public needs to understand when we're talking about challenges. And again, we had that assistance, we're making sure, but if that water is not at the temperature it needs to be, if that light goes out, then it's going to freeze.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then we also had some issues with folks who were coming into the school buildings, leaving doors open, windows open, which caused temperatures to drop as well. So lesson number 1 for everybody, if you're in this kind of a freeze, keep the drip going, keep the doors shut, keep the windows down. So thank you all. Thanks for being here. Okay.
I was going to take a commercial break on the water breaks, reminding the citizens.
One real quick thing, you all, for Mr. Chow. He wants to give a commercial for the water main breaks and what folks should be doing.
Sure. So as the mayor indicated, we have a lot of water main breaks out there right now. We're counting close nearly to about 100 breaks in the system, and we have hundreds of frozen services. Now, many of the services are built, not below the frost line, so that's why we have sent out advisories early on to ensure that if you have problems in the past, leave your water dripping, running stream water, so to keep that water flowing so it doesn't freeze. Now, and obviously now we've confronted with hundreds of these frozen services. We are working around the clock, 24/7. We have our contractor helping us out. We have a command center. Right now, I'm just asking for patience from citizens. I know many of them are without water for days and they're waiting for us to show up. I can assure you that we know where you are and we'll get to it as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.